Here's why most of America is completely unprepared. Amidst historical prosperity, most Americans remain unprepared for the looming threat of famine, lacking essential skills and infrastructure resilience, despite recent awakenings to economic instability and growing interest in survivalists. This reality is underscored by the dire situation in North Korea, where human rights activists, as reported by Great Game India, report severe food shortages resulting in widespread starvation and fatalities, even in the capital of Pyongyang. The notion of widespread hunger has been a prominent concern in American society for quite some time, even during the era of the Great Depression, when the majority of the U.S. population was involved in agriculture. The nation never experienced a full-scale famine, although there were localized instances of food shortages, such as during the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. They pale in comparison to the devastating famines witnessed in regions like Asia, the Eastern Bloc, Africa, or the Middle East over the past century. Contrastingly, Western Europeans have confronted significant famines during wartime, like the Dutch famine, leaving a lasting impression on their collective psyche. However, many Americans fail to comprehend this reality. Due to the decades of stability and economic prosperity, the idea of facing food scarcity seems absurd to them. Mentioning the possibility of an economic collapse often elicits scoffs and dismissals as a mere conspiracy theory. In contrast to the Great Depression era, today's U.S. population is largely disconnected from agriculture, lacking practical knowledge of self-sufficiency. Mastering these skills is not a quick process achievable through books or online tutorials. It demands years of hand-on experience. Over the past 2 decades, there's been a significant shift in the preparedness culture, particularly in my experience writing for Liberty Media, the writer says, since 2006. Initially, the preparedness movement was relatively small, with many individuals hesitant to discuss such topics openly. However, in recent years, there's been a surge in the popularity of preparedness culture. Millions of Americans have embraced survivalism, investing in intensive preparations and even firearms training, and what was once considered eccentric or paranoid behavior is now viewed as trendy and socially acceptable. The financial crisis of 2008-2009 served as a wake-up call for many Americans, highlighting the fragility of the U.S. economy. Subsequently, the COVID-19 pandemic, accompanied by stringent lockdown measures and perceived encroachments on personal freedoms, further jolted the populace. These events validated concerns raised by so-called conspiracy theorists as previously dismissed warnings suddenly materialized. And with each crisis orchestrated by globalists and governments, the ranks of preppers swell in response. However, the looming threat of famine is not due to a lack of awareness among individual Americans. Many recognize a potential danger. Instead, the crux of the issue lies in our flawed infrastructure and logistic systems, which are prone to failure. Just-in-time freight system, for instance, lacks redundancy, leaving communities vulnerable to disruptions. Any minor disturbance could sever supply lines to towns and cities for extended periods. Moreover, our reliance on external food sources exacerbates the problem, especially in states with limited agricultural capacity. The question remains, can regions ensure access to food during crises when faced with such interdependencies? Moreover, a significant portion of the population, including those engaged in preparedness efforts, lack first-hand experience with large-scale starvation events. Adapting mentally to a threat one has never encountered poses a formidable challenge. I recommend occasional fasting experience to gain insight into the sensation of starving. Begin with a 24-hour fast, extend to 48 hours. Test your limits by gradually increasing the duration. Now, remarkably, the human body can endure 3 weeks or more without sustenance. However, initial panic surrounding potential hunger may trigger violent reactions during famines. Individuals experiencing starvation within the first 3 days often succumb to primal instincts, leading to widespread unrest and historic crisis events witnessed during food shortages. Now, yet the challenge extends beyond personal endurance. Witnessing loved ones starve presents a profound emotional burden as well, untrained and potentially fueling looting and crime during crises. During times of collapse, cultivating crops becomes perilous. They are susceptible to theft and destruction, necessitating extensive community efforts for maintenance and protection. Even small scale gardens can attract unwanted attention and prove challenging to conceal. Similarly, hunting may offer initial sustenance, particularly in rural areas. However, competition for game increases rapidly, prompting animals to migrate away from hunted regions. Venturing further for sustenance poses risks, especially amid crisis conditions. While wild edibles offer sustenance in abundance during spring and summer, the energy expended in gathering them may outweigh the caloric intake. Advocates of solely relied on wild plants often overlook the practical challenges, as survivalists banking on foraging alone may face fatal consequences. In crisis scenarios, growing, hunting, and foraging serve as supplementary measures, particularly in the initial stages. Without primary emergency provisions, survival becomes precarious. Food shortage has remained pivotal in civilizations for millennia, proving its effectiveness. As secure communities emerge, agriculture can regain prominence, diminishing the reliance on stored provisions. Yet until then, the contents of basements or garages remain life-saving essentials. Regrettably, some individuals believe they can forego storing supplies, relying instead on taking from others. Firstly, those who prioritize this approach likely possess psychopathic tendencies, and I hold on to no sympathy for them. And secondly, their survival prospects are bleak. Engaging in violent encounters escalates the risk of injury, of course, or death, limiting to the swift demise of looters and raiders as defenders safeguard their resources. During the onset of collapse, many Americans will experience profound shock, whether triggered by a grid outage, economic downfall, or supply chain disruption. The pervasive panic surrounding hunger will persist. And those knowledgeable about famine can mitigate panic and organize for safety, ensuring their survival and prosperity. Conversely, individuals lacking any understanding of famine will succumb to panic within the first week without food, resulting in detrimental errors. In uncertain times, mental preparedness holds equal importance to physical readiness. It's imperative to bear this in mind as we navigate the challenges ahead. And this is on Great Game India. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.